Welcome to Dodgers Dogs. Casey Porter here alongside Austin Brubaker. I think that my streaming software has connected. We'll see. It's always an interesting deal when we go live. Austin, good evening. Thank you for joining.
Good evening. As I know I can hear, we can hear some Dodger dogs in the background, which,
Yeah.
that means that it is time to talk some Dodgers baseball.
Yeah, my wife will be home here in a minute, and then they'll get taken care of. They're pissed about something right now, of which that's about 90% of their life. So not exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, we took them for a walk this morning. We fed them, played with them, gave them all the love we could. So going to have to deal with that for a minute or two as we go on here. So, hey, lots to talk about tonight. The first thing we're going to talk about, Austin, this is your sweet spot. This is where you do very well. The payroll for the Dodgers. Talk a little bit about how much money the Dodgers are going to shed, how much they're going to have on the payroll, and how they're going to go from here.
Yeah, so that's a really good question because there are opportunities this upcoming offseason for the Dodgers to be able to spend this money. We've seen over the past couple of off seasons the little bit of hesitancy to go towards some of the top guys. I know, especially last off season, they kind of went for a lot of those 1-year deals. I think in anticipation to potentially go after one of the top guys or to kind of keep what payroll kind of limited for what it is. So with the Dodgers payroll, there are several guys coming off the books. The big thing that the decisions that are going to be made are what you're going to do with some of the club options coming up. So those are going to be some of the decisions that the Dodgers are going to have to make as far as what they're going to do with some of the options. Guys like Lance Lynn, probably not going to pick up. The biggest decisions I think they're going to have to make is what they're going to do with some of the bullpen arms. Some of the guys that have been injured, do you want to pick up some of those options? Guys like Joe Kelly, Blake Trinan, Daniel Hudson, what are you going to do with those ones? But right now, the Dodgers are actually in a fairly good position for what they're doing. If you look at their estimated payroll, I don't think this takes everything into account on FanGraphs, but it is about $127 million, which gives the Dodgers plenty of flexibility to do what they need to do to help build the Dodgers and build this team back to being able to go to the World Series.
I believe the cap is $237 million.
I don't know exactly. I know it goes up every single year. So it's something like that. Obviously, teams can go over that. We saw the Mets go way over that, which isn't always the smartest thing to do. But when you're a team like the Dodgers, depending on where you invest your money, it could be of real benefit, and especially for a team that is sick and tired of losing in the division round. I think you could potentially see them be a little bit more aggressive in that aspect.
Good evening, Roy. Thank you for joining. Dodgers need to spend whatever it takes to sign Yamamoto and Ohtani. After we sign those two, then we can look at trades to beef up our pitching and get more bats in lineup. Ohtani, I've kind of warmed down on him for the simple fact that what the Dodgers need next year is pitching, and he will not be able to provide that. And, hey, with the Tommy John, who knows what kind of offense he's going to provide. Plus, I'm not huge on the really long-term contracts. I kind of tend to agree with the Dodgers front office with that. That's why I wanted the Dodgers to pick him up via the trade. Of course, that wouldn't have worked either because, obviously he had the injury going down the stretch. But that's why I like Dodgers getting guys like him in trade scenarios, because you get that kind of talent, but you don't get him with the 10-year-long contract. So I've kind of warmed on Ohtani. I think there's other options that would allow the Dodgers more flexibility that could kind of give them the same effect.
Yeah, I think there certainly is a case for that, because especially when you go for those long-term contracts, I think there's a ton of risk with that. I think the length of those, there are a lot of times where you're going to regret some of the end of those contracts. I'll stay on the Ohtani train, only because I think that he is a once in a lifetime hitter, and I think him being in the Dodgers, being in that market, not that they need help with attendance or anything like that, but I think he would be such an attraction. And I think he would be somebody that, you talk about a market in Japan that loves the game of baseball and loves Shohei Ohtani, to be able to grab that attraction. Also, he is in, I don't think it can be understated how good of a hitter he has been. And he's been that and a solid pitcher. So I don't know necessarily how long he's going to be pitching. Obviously, he won't be pitching next season. That's certainly something that the Dodgers are going to have to address. I think he is such a unique talent and somebody who is so good. And another thing that I could point to is this postseason. You look at the teams that out-homer their opponents. I know game of baseball is not just about slugging. Shohei Ohtani is a really good slugger. Teams that are out-homering their opponents this postseason are winning almost every single game. I don't know the exact number. I saw it. They've only lost a handful of games when they out-homer their opponent. I think Shohei Ohtani would add that element. I think he'd be such a unique talent, such a unique prospect.
But look at the teams that are in the playoffs and in the finals that actually put the ball in play. Compare that. I mean, the homer, I think, the more runs, that's great. But look at the teams that have been in the finals and look at the type of offense they play.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you have a little bit of dynamic offenses that are in here. You look at a team
look at the
like
Astros.
Arizona.
They put the ball in play.
Yeah, they put the ball in play. You look at a team like the Phillies, though, who mashed the home. They hit a ton of home runs. You can win with a lot of different styles. I'm not saying just go after guys that hit home runs. I think that would be something that wouldn't be a benefit because there's not as much dynamics in that. I think with Shohei Ohtani, I think he would add that added element that would be something that would be transcendent just really well. And then what you can do on the sides, what you can do on some of the supplemental guys is add some of that athleticism that this team desperately needs. Add some of those guys that walk a lot but don't strike out a lot, that are able to put the ball in play and set up for a lot of these guys. The Dodgers offense did not show up for this past postseason. They didn't really show up for the previous postseason as well. Something with that has to be addressed as well. I think Shohei Ohtani would be one of those guys that could add that necessary element to help this team. And I mean, obviously, I think both of us would agree that he is
What is he going to give you next year?
He's going to be offensively one of the best hitters in the game of baseball.
Even off the Tommy John?
Even off the Tommy John. He was on the played for the Angels and went through this exact same thing, because this isn't the first time that he's had Tommy John, which he could point to that and be something where, okay, maybe you don't want to give him the necessary contract because he seems to get injured a lot pitching. There seems to be a lot of wear and tear. You don't know necessarily how long he's going to do, but he was able to show up and hit even when he had his previous Tommy John surgery. So with that, I don't have necessarily as much concern about that.
So would you go for adding more power, or would you go for adding more dynamics to the offense?
I'd go for both. And I think Shohei Ohtani would add that necessary power. And then I think you look at some of the other aspects of the field to add some of the more dynamics to the offense.
How close were the Dodgers this year to the top of the NL in home runs?
That's actually a really good question. I'd have to look that up. Or if somebody in the chat would like to look that up or has that information, we'd love to see some of the statisticians in the chat as well. Looking at that, I think Shohei Ohtani just would be a transcendental player for this organization, and I think he would bring a ton of excitement, not just in America but internationally for the Dodgers organization, to where whatever contract they sign with him, they'd be able to make up that money pretty quickly.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, Ohtani's going to bring a lot of people to the stands. I'm efforting to get this. My computer is not wanting to cooperate with me at the moment. Let me get to the team hitting stats here in just a second. But I'd be curious. We'll get to that, like I said, as soon as my computer wants to load this thing up, and we'll get after it from there. But I am less in the adding power category. I am over the, hey, let's see how many home runs we can hit. Let's build an offense around slugging. I think, yeah, hey, hitting home runs is good, but I think it's a byproduct of playing good offense, concentrating on making solid contact, and putting the ball in play. You cannot hit home runs if the ball is not in play. So I think the Dodgers, we'll get to it here in a second. My computer is not Do you have the ability to look it up? My computer is really just not.
I can work on that right now.
Yeah, I don't know what my computer is doing right now, but I am all about. Okay, so Max Muncy, is he going to come back?
So with him, he has I believe now with the incentives that are added, $14 million contract. Dodgers pick that up every single day, even if they decide to trade him, which certainly could be an option. That contract with the production that he's had, you pick that up every single day.
Okay, so Max Muncy's back. That's a power guy, and that's a big strikeout guy, right? Okay, so
yes.
JD Martinez would not be back if you signed Ohtani, correct? Okay, so
yes, that is correct.
So what are you going to do with Will Smith?
I think he continues to be one of the catchers. I think you have to find some sort of way.
So what do you do with him when he's not catching?
To give him some. Yeah, that's a really good question, and something that the Dodgers are going to have to look at, whether they add some more flexibility to him. I don't know necessarily if that is the answer. That's a really good question as far as what they want to do. I know there's been mention about him playing third base. I don't know if that's necessarily the option or what direction that they want to go. But I think he's going to be primarily the starting catcher, and then they'll try to figure out how they want to do that. And with Ohtani, I don't know necessarily if they want to play him every single day coming off of the Tommy John surgery as well.
So the Dodgers were 4th in the National League in home runs. And when you look at batting average, I'm trying to get okay, so the Dodgers team batting, let's see, this is National League, this is postseason. Let me get to the regular season.
Yeah, so regular season, the Dodgers were 2nd in all of baseball.
What'd that do for them?
Obviously, they didn't make it. They obviously got eliminated.
Okay, so if you look at batting average in the National League, well, of course, we're playing devil's advocate. Austin and I are these live shows. We've kind of talked a little bit. You know, we're going to have some back and forth on this. Hey, and it's going to be legit. If we agree, we're going to agree. But if we disagree, I've told them, hey, let it rip, right? Hey, this is the war room right here. So we're going to let it rip and go, okay, so batting average in the National League, the Los Angeles Dodgers were 13th. Okay, and they were what'd you say they were in home runs?
The Dodgers were 2nd in all of baseball. I'm seeing, let's see, where are you seeing the batting average for 13th?
In the National League.
In the National League.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing here. Did I have that backwards?
I'm seeing the Dodgers in the National League. I'm looking at Baseball Reference. I'm actually seeing them at 3rd in the National League.
Yeah, that's actually a lot better than I thought they would be. Yeah. Okay, so stolen bases. Let's look at stolen bases here. Okay, stolen bases. The Dodgers were.
They're below
11th.
league average.
There's a dynamic right there that needs to change. The Dodgers are 11th. Okay, strikeouts. The Dodgers are 8th. Worst in striking out, 1,359 strikeouts. So I'm going for the type of player that has the ability to steal bases. I'm going for the type of player that on base. I'm going for the type of player that can get on base, that's going to have a high on base percentage, doesn't strike out, and has a high average. You've already got Max Muncy. You're going to have Shohei Ohtani. You already have Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman. You have James Outman, who's going to hit you 20 home runs. You got Will Smith that's going to hit however many home runs he's going to hit. I think you need a David Peralta type offensive player that also steals 20 to 25 bases. That's of course, who's to say if that guy's out there? I think that's the target, though, that you need to fill in for left field and second base.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be tough to do, or at least you're going to have to be creative this offseason to find that, just because the free agency class is kind of limited, especially offensively this season, which is why you would go after a guy like him. You look at some other guys that are out there. Matt Chapman is out there at third base. I don't know necessarily if I bring him in. He's a little bit older of a third baseman, has a little bit more strikeouts than what I'd be looking for. You look at some of the other guys. Candelario at third base could be potentially another option. You look at guys like Cody Bellinger is going to be a free agent. But a lot of the guys, you're looking at guys that you could potentially bring in that can help supplement the roster, not necessarily those star impact players. Otherwise, you'd have to be looking for a lot of those guys at free agency, or you'd be looking to call up some of the guys. I think with this, the reason why I'm a little bit more into Shohei Ohtani, just because I think he is far above, in a way, the best hitter in this free agency class. And I think he is so unique. He's somebody that we've never seen, which is a little bit scary because he's not very predictive. We don't necessarily know how this story is going to end going forward. We don't know what the long-term ramifications of putting this much pressure on your body, both hitting and pitching wise. I don't know what that's going to do long-term wise. So if you have that as a concern, I think that is absolutely valid. I just think he would be of enormous help and would be such a big market addition to this team.
Pitching also, we're going to talk tonight on our Down the Farm segment. We're going to highlight Landonknack, Nick Frasso, and we're also going to talk about, boy, my computer is just absolutely not cooperating with me right now. I hope all this continues to work. Okay, so pitching-wise, we're going to look at Landonknack, we're going to look at Nick Frasso, and we're going to look at riverryan tonight. We're actually going to play some video on them, and then we are going to get after it and talk about them. So one of the guys that the Dodgers could bring up, Johnny DeLuca. Johnny DeLuca, 294 average. He is definitely a 2020 guy. He had last year 12 stolen bases, but he got injured, and he was also back and forth, spent a lot of time in the major leagues. When I say 12, I mean he had 12 at the minor league level, and he definitely has 20-20 potential, outside 30-30 potential. I think he's a guy that needs to be valued. I think Drew Avens is a guy that needs to be valued. You know, a guy that can get on base, that can score runs, and that can really be a guy that can just create havoc with the other team. So if you want to look in-house, I think your first two guys from an outfield perspective, of course, Miguel Vargas. You know, he's a guy that I think got off to a bad start last year with the wrist injury and then just never quite recovered. And then also Michael Busch. So kind of chew on those four guys, Austin.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll let you speak a little bit more to Drew Avens, just because he hasn't been a guy that I've actually seen a whole lot. But I had a chance to see Johnny DeLuca, and just looking at a lot of his numbers, he's somebody that needs to be given plenty of opportunities going into next season. What I love about DeLuca, and this is something that I kind of use as a valuation of target, and we've talked about this in the past, his strikeout percentage in comparison to a lot of the power production that he has. So a lot of that I look at strikeout percentage and ISO, comparing those two. Is your ISO higher than a lot of your strikeout percentage? And for DeLuca, it's consistently that, which means that there's a really good balance between having power and also being able to not strike out a whole lot. He strikes out at a below average rate consistently. He also has the ability to.
He's the exact player I'm trying to describe, isn't he?
It's absolutely, and I believe. I mean, you look at him. Dodgers fans had the opportunity to get a little bit of a glimpse at him. He had some pretty dynamic catches in the outfield too. He's a really good athlete as well, can steal some bases. He's absolutely the type of player, or at least one of the type of players, that deserves an opportunity with the Dodgers and should get plenty of playing time. You talk a lot about a lot of these guys need to have decent and lots of at-bats just to get acclimated to the major league level. DeLuca is one of those guys who you could put in there. There are going to be openings in the Dodgers outfield. We know David Peralta is not going to be coming back. You look at a guy like Jason Hayward, he is kind of 50-50. He's not signed, so the Dodgers would have to re-sign him if they want to bring him back. There's going to be openings for this outfield, and a guy like Johnny DeLuca, I believe, will be ready and can run with that role. So I'm all for putting Johnny DeLuca on this field, having him be part of that outfield mix.
Johnny DeLuca left field, James Outman center field, Mookie Betts in right field, maybe Miguel Vargas at third base, Michael Busch at third base, the other one at second base. Max Muncy does some DHing if you don't have an Ohtani type guy. I'm talking about it if you don't get Shohei Ohtani, if you don't want to commit to that many years, that's what your lineup would look like. Johnny DeLuca adds a a guy that will steal bases, a guy that won't strike out as much as we're used to, a high average guy, 30-30 potential, elite defense, and he's a Southern California boy. I think he's definitely he needs to be a mainstay in your lineup next year. Michael Bush also very good player. Didn't really get his feet, didn't kind of get his feet firm at the major league level. Miguel Vargas, I think a lot of that can be to his hand injury. Then also, just simply put, he didn't get off to a good start, never got comfortable, never could quite deal with the failure that was coming his way at a consistent rate, certainly more consistently than he's ever had before. Don't count him out. I tweeted out about him today. Don't count him out because he's another guy. That's the type of hitter the Dodgers need, gap to gap, a doubles guy who can hit home runs, but high average, low strikeouts, line drive type hitter.
Yeah, no, if they can get Miguel Vargas back to being the guy that we saw in the minor leagues, that guy that's able to hit to that right center field gap, that guy who is able to control the barrel really well, I think he would be somebody who would be of enormous impact on this roster and would really help to really lengthen that lineup and add a little bit of a different element to that. So all of those guys are certainly in the mix. One guy that's a little bit of an X factor going into next season, and one guy that I want to make sure Dodgers fans don't forget about, Andy Paez.
Yep.
Do not forget about him.
Coming off the shoulder surgery.
Because with him, what I saw in Great Lakes, and this is something that has been missing from the Dodgers seemingly in the postseason, is that attitude. He has that it attitude where he wants to take the bat in those big moments. He's got that big dynamic arm in the outfield. He's got that enormous power. He was able to work and cut down a little bit of the strikeouts. You saw that going from high A going into double A, he was starting to get a little bit of momentum this season before the surgery. Don't forget about him because he could play a big impact on this team depending on what moves they decide to make.
Yeah, the only thing about him is shoulder surgeries are tough, so it's going to take him a while to get over that. So I don't see the ETA being anything immediate whatsoever. Plus, you got to jump Johnny DeLuca. Plus, you got to jump guys like Drew Avens, Steven Duggar. I know they ended the season with David Dahl last year. It's a lot of guys to jump. And Paez is another one of those guys that can hit the ball to the moon. Lots and lots of swing and miss. What I mean? Lots of swing and miss. So he's another one of those guys that you'd be adding to your lineup that's going to be the 3 true outcome type of guy that, hey, as a matter of fact, 2 years ago, Andy Paez hit more fly balls than he did ground balls. So he gets the ball in the air, and having said that, he just swings and misses a lot. So I think this is bad timing for him because you're looking at a team that didn't hit in the postseason. It's going to be a hard sell for me. I think he's going to be a really good Major League Baseball player. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I hope you don't think I'm talking down about Andy Paez or anything like that. I just think his style of offense right now isn't what the Dodgers are going to be looking for.
I think that's a fair point. I think it's going to take some time in order for him to get back on there. I just want to make sure the Dodgers fans do not forget about that name. He is on the 40-man roster, so he does have that as a little bit of an advantage, which we'll see how the Dodgers decide to maneuver with that. But the player that I saw in Great Lakes is a real difference maker, and I love that attitude that he plays with.
When you saw him in Great Lakes, he was with Austin Chubb for his 3rd season. And his first 3 seasons in rookie ball at Ogden, and then at, I believe it was Rancho, and then also at it was the DSL, and then at Great Lakes. He was with Austin Chubb all of those times, and so I think he felt comfortable with him. And the Andy Paez you saw at High A Great Lakes actually led the entire minor league system in home runs. So, he is a really good player, has obviously maybe the strongest arm in all the minor leagues. I mean, the guy, he just has an absolute, not a cannon, he has a bazooka. I mean, this guy can throw a ball through a brick wall. Super, super talented. Dropped about 35 pounds last year, was playing more center field, which made him more marketable. So, yes, Andy Paez, obviously a really good player. So, hey, let's get to some comments here. Hepsi, and let me remind, I tried to set up a super chat. Wasn't smart enough to figure out how to do it in about 15 minutes. It's probably why my computer is not cooperating with me right now. It's also why I was a little bit late getting on. So, hey, Just want to remind you that we do have a GoFundMe account if you'd like to help Dodgers Daily, if you'd like to help me put some cash in Austin's pocket for helping Dodgers Daily grow and do that kind of thing. This does take time, and it does take some money from time to time. We have to buy microphones and lights and that kind of stuff. If you'd like to help, I have the Dodgers Daily GoFundMe account in the description, so you could go click that and go help Dodgers Daily. Donate $1 or whatever you feel like, or don't donate at all. This channel will always be free. And also, not just in the chat here, but also in a regular message, go ahead and leave a like in the regular part of this, and then a regular message. That way it'll hit that algo with YouTube, and it'll get recommended, and we can keep going on from there. So let's get to some comments. Hep C, good evening. Matt Moore should be a target. Need better lefty relievers. The two lefty relievers in-house I'm going to feature tomorrow on my social medias would be Alec Gamboa and John Rooney. Then obviously you have Caleb Ferguson, Ryan Yarbrough, and Alex Vesia.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Matt Moore, he's a little bit of an older guy that the Dodgers could be able to target. I mean, you look at him, he had really solid numbers this season, has been kind of that veteran presence, left-hander, was a starting pitcher back in the day. He's somebody who, if you want to sign a little bit of an older reliever who has pretty good strikeouts and walk percentages, some of the peripheral numbers, he would be somebody potentially to target out of the bullpen and left-handed. I think the Dodgers certainly could use some help, left-handed bullpen arms. It will be interesting to see who they decide and what type of talent they decide to target. Guy that I liked at the trade deadline as a potential option was a guy like a Brett Suter, who's a little bit of a softer thrower, but who had really good numbers. I think the Dodgers certainly could look to adding a left-handed arm, whether that is signing an actual contract or picking up them through some sort of minor league contract with the opportunity to come up.
Good evening, Michael. Yamamoto plus Nola plus trade starter will make this team the team it needs to be. Yeah, that would be pretty cool. Yamamoto plus Nola plus a trade starter. That would move Walker Buehler to maybe the 2 spot. That would probably move Ryan Pepio out of the starting rotation. It would probably keep Bobby Miller in it. So yeah, that would definitely be some really good moves for the Dodgers to make there. Okay, they'd make him Michael says it'd make him the team. It needs to be to go the distance. So what do you think about Yamamoto, Nola plus a trade starter?
Yeah, I think if I had to rank
the starters that I would go after, does the Dodgers need that much?
So that under that scenario, you probably would not go after Ohtani. I think you would love to go and spend everything. I don't think you can be necessarily reckless with this. I think you still have to be smart. I think with a guy like Yamamoto, potentially pairing Ohtani and Yamamoto would be absolutely incredible. Biggest thing about Yamamoto is his age. I think pitchers kind of break down a little bit as they age, or at least there's a little bit more of a risk with that. With Yamamoto only being 25, that is one of the reasons I like him. I like Aaron Nola because a lot of the peripheral, some of the expected FIP, xFIP, and Sierra numbers, some of those more advanced, more highly correlated with future success numbers. I like a lot of those numbers for Aaron Nola. We've seen him be effective in the playoffs, even though postseason performance today wasn't quite to the level that it has been. And then you look at some of the trade options. I think that's probably one of the areas that they're going to try to explore. I've expressed some interest in potentially trading for a guy like Corbin Burns or Tyler Glasnow, who I think is somebody that, even with his injury concerns, I really like a lot of the background details about some of the underlying numbers predicting future success. I think all of those options, I don't think they will do all of those options at the same time unless they only go after starting pitching during the offseason. But I think all of those avenues are going to be explored, and I think they're probably going to do at least one of those things because they have to do one of those things.
So just know, if you want an Ohtani, if you want a Nola, if you want these big free agent guys, Blake Snell hasn't get brought up yet, but you're better at the free agent versus trade, so correct me if I'm wrong on any of these.
Yeah.
So, okay, if you want these big name guys and you want to sign to big contracts, just know Johnny DeLuca has to be your left fielder. Michael Busch has to be your second baseman. Miguel Vargas has to be in your lineup somewhere. You have to keep James Outman in the lineup. And the reason is you got to surround cheap contracts around the bigger ones.
Yes.
You can't have big time, free agents that cost all this money and then have, you can't have 15 of those guys on even the Dodgers can't. So if you're going to have 4 or 5, you already have Freddie Freeman, you already have Mookie Betts. Will Smith is very cheap. So if you go get an Ohtani or if you go get 3 or 4 really expensive guys, that makes 5 or 6 just in your, just this year, then you've got to have some cheap guys around him. That's why you have to continue to give these guys and the farm the runway they need, because you have to have 4 or 5 guys that have come from your system that you're paying way less than actually you're getting value from to supplement around those guys.
Yeah, and I think that's some of the mistakes some of the Dodgers teams of past have made. I look at the 2021 squad. They were well ahead in first place for a long time. That should have been the opportunity to get some of these young guys, a guy like Miguel Vargas, who was coming up to be a rookie, or 2022 squad, I should say, or whatever. Get some of those guys ready to be able to get some of the experience they needed before they might need them for the role that they have. And so with that, I think a lot of these young guys, they are extremely talented, and we've covered them at Dodgers Daily. We know just how talented they are. If you want to go after these large free agent contracts, Dodgers are lucky enough to where they can supplement that with some of these cheaper contracts, but they're going to have to take advantage of the talent that they have in the minor league system.
Okay, so Michael, I'm on total the same page here. We need to focus on having a less platoon-oriented approach. Good evening, Grizz Monster. Thanks for joining. I'm a hard pass on Ohtani, unfortunately. I am in that camp. Austin is not. So Grizz and I, you and I, like we mostly do, we agree on almost everything. We're in agreement there. Austin is not because he's not a good ball player, but because his supposed asking price is $50-60 million for 12 years. Absolutely not anywhere as close to 12 years. I'm not touching anywhere as close to 10 years. That's just, in my opinion, you mentioned you can't be reckless about it. To me, that is reckless. Hep C, Dodgers need Ohtani. They need one more big bat. See, I love this. This is great. Back and forth. This is what happened. Trust me. When you get in the war room with the Dodgers and they're talking about all this, this is exactly what happens in that room. One guy wants them, one guy doesn't. They cuss, they discuss, they hash it out, they weigh the pros and cons, and at the end of the day, whoever does the best job, coming up with the best plan usually wins. But then, it's kind of like that head coach. He goes, hey, I appreciate y'all's input. This is going to be my decision. We're going to do what I want to do, and here's what we're going to do. Right? That's kind of how it goes at the end of the day. So Hep C says Dodgers need Ohtani. They need one more big bat. We do need pitching, but get transcendent player like Shohei will take less pressure or take more pressure off of Mookie. Jay, good evening, Jay. Thank you for joining. Might not be on topic for this show, but I'm wondering what Casey thinks James Outman has to do to take his game to the next level. Austin, did you see my tweet on him today?
I saw it briefly. I didn't. I don't remember exactly what it says. Why don't you enlighten the audience about it?
I think everybody here knows that I am a super positive person when it comes to baseball. Correct? Okay.
Yes.
I mean, there's just so much failure in this game. Only positive thinkers make it in this game. John Rooney told me that the first time I met him. John Rooney's one of those really analytical guys, and I've heard that said a million different times. Hey, man, those negative thinkers don't make it. And I'd never kind of really put it into those terms, but it totally makes sense to me. So totally a negative thinker. So the way that these guys think as they come through, they think, okay, what is it that I do that's going to get me to the major leagues? And they don't, trust me, they don't think about what are the things that I do that will keep me out of the major leagues. They don't even think about those things because those are negative thoughts. And then about the time you think about that, then that's exactly what's going to happen on the field. So trust me, these guys, the St. Louis Cardinals, they would tell you in the 80s, you need to work on what got you to the major leagues 90% of the time. Then you need to work on things that might get you kicked out of the major leagues 10% of the time. Because if you keep doing what got you to the major leagues, you are going to be the player that we signed. Okay, so I say all that to say that James Outman, I love James Outman. You know that. He's one of my favorite players. Matter of fact, the first tweet I ever had on him was that he was going to be a major leaguer and the starting center fielder for the Dodgers for a long time. If you don't believe me, you can go back to, I believe it's 2021. You can read the tweet for yourself. I actually think I even put at the top of it, bold prediction alert. James Outman has to quit striking out. He struck out 180 some odd times this year. Way too much. I don't care if you're a 2020 guy, which he almost was this year. He certainly has the ability to do that. His swing is flat enough. I've seen him do it. The year before in AAA, he got his strikeout rate down to about 26%, 25% in there. So for James Outman to take the next step, because he's fast, right? Okay.
Yes.
First of all, he needs to become a little bit better at stealing bases. He needs to get 20 easy. 20 stolen bases needs to be very easy for him because he has that kind of speed. Now, here's how he does it. Okay, Austin. You put the ball in play instead of 180 times, let's say, instead of a 33% strikeout rate, whatever it was this year, if you can reduce that down to 24, 25%, that's what, 25, 30 extra balls in play a year, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And then using his speed, that even if he doesn't hit those balls hard, that's going to translate to 5 hits or so that he doesn't even square up and hit hard. Okay, so there's 5 more opportunities to steal bases. And then out of those 25, another 5 or 10 are going to be hit hard, right? Okay, so there's another 5 hits or so. So if you put all of that into the equation, if you reduce the strikeout rate, that puts him on base more. That gives him the ability to steal a lot more bases, okay? And that makes him the player that the Dodgers actually need him to be if he's going to be the starting center fielder for the next 10 years. So
yeah,
literally it comes down to one thing. He's got to, even if it's dribbling a ball, 60 miles an hour to a second baseman, figure out a way to put the ball in play and not strike out as much as he did this year. It is literally as simple as that. And he is capable of doing it. We've seen it. I said it just a minute ago. We've seen him lower his strikeout rate every single year he was in the minor leagues up until last year. Reset when you get to the majors. Hopefully that trend continues again. Whereas, he hits the majors, he starts lowering it every year from here. I think he can do it.
Yeah, I think he can absolutely do that too. It's about making those small...
Was I too hard on him?
No, absolutely not. No, I think it's about making those small incremental changes to improve yourself. Just get yourself a little bit better than last year. I don't think the ask for James Outman is to necessarily go from a 31, 32% strikeout rate to a 15%.
25.
That'd be astronomical.
I'm asking for 25%.
You just have to make those small steps to get a little bit better at that. And I think over time, as he sees more big league pitching, I think he's going to be able to make those adjustments and be able to take that next step. I'm so excited to see James Outman. I was jumping up and down in Fort Wayne when he hit a go-ahead home run over there back in 2021 for Great Lakes. He's absolutely one of my favorite players as well. Love James Outman, and we expect and think that he's going to continue to do great things for the Dodgers.
Strikeout percent, 31.9%. That is almost 7% higher than it can be. For me, for him to be the type of player that we know he's capable of, that needs to come down 7%. And I know that sounds like a lot, but I'm telling you, he's capable of doing it.
Yes, he is capable
also, too,
of
Austin,
doing that.
If the Dodgers shift focus, I'm not saying you just overcorrect, but if the Dodgers do shift focus to emphasizing a little bit more contact and less slug, and then matter of fact, if they just say, hey guys, we're sick of you striking out, stop doing it, figure it out, how to hit the middle of the ball and put it in play, versus a philosophy just organizational wide that's like, hey, we understand you're going to swing and miss, we understand you're going to strike out because we want you to hit the home runs. So I think if the organization shifts their philosophy just a little bit, not all the way around, but just tweaks it a little bit into being, kind of demanding a little bit more contact from every one of their players, I think that will help him too. So I think he can definitely get his strikeout rate down to 25%. Okay, Roy, thank you again for joining tonight. Nola, as if you just like tonight, Ohtani is not supposed to be the answer, but a key piece to getting back prominence. I understand your point, Michael, but Nola is not consistent. Yeah, this is great conversation. This is the exact kind of conversation I love. Super, super respectful. Hey, give your opinion. Let's get in the war room. Let's go.
Yeah, this would be easy if we all had a simple, agreeable answer. But with these decisions,
And boring.
this is, yeah, I know it'd be boring, but this is incredibly difficult stuff, and we all have different opinions and thoughts, and we love to hear them.
Yeah, Gris says, sorry to Hep. Dodgers need pitching, especially left-handed pitching. I wouldn't disagree with that. We're going to highlight. Matter of fact, here in just a minute, when we get through these, if we can get through these comments, we're going to highlight 3 of the pitchers that I think will have their ETAs for 2024. We're actually going to show video. We're all going to talk about them here in a minute. That is going to be nickfrasso, landonknack, and riverryan. Of course, that is if we have time here. Obviously, we have a wonderful audience. Ohtani is generational. Dodgers have one more mega deal slot to hand out. Yep, that makes sense. Ohtani is worth it. They can sign Ohtani and still address needs by trades and free agency.
Yeah, no, that with the payroll, we talked about this a little bit at the beginning. They do have a little bit of flexibility. Ohtani is not going to be cheap. He's going to be somebody that is going to be extremely expensive, but I think that's something there because he's a generational superstar, because he has such an impact, not just in America, but in other countries as well. I think it could be something where they see it as almost a net benefit.
The Domino, thank you for joining. What happened with Michigan football?
Oh, as far as there's just a whole bunch of different cheating allegations going on right now.
I was going to say, they ought to be celebrating after just beating the crap out of Michigan State this last weekend, right?
I know. I was a little bit disappointed in that outcome. That kind of hurt me a little bit, so.
Roy says, Michael, if Nola can eat innings without giving up 3 or 4 runs, then you are correct. The Domino, good evening, gentlemen. Good evening to you. Grizz, he didn't get the Angels a World Series, so I don't care if he's a Dodger or not unless we win a World Series. No doubt. Hep says, I think they should decline Hudson in training. In spring training, you can take a flyer on Reyes option because he is cheaper than the rest. Craig, good evening, Craig. Thank you for joining. Early game, 4:30 Pacific time. Yep. Roy, game 7, Phillies and D-backs. That's going to be fun. Same with the Rangers last night. That was a big-time game.
And the Rangers are up 3-1 right now.
Awesome. I'm rooting for them to win the World Series. It's a team game, says Hep. He plays for the Angels. It's not his fault. I would agree with that. Greg says game 7, Phils and D-backs. Jay says 2024 luxury tracks threshold. Thank you, Jay. We have again, I'm going to say it again, we absolutely have the best baseball crowd of any show out there. Not the biggest, but the best. I can't just go back through all the comment sections and read some of the just wonderful thoughts Jay's left over the last year or two, man. It has just been simply fantastic. So glad that Jay found this channel this year. So here we go. Luxury tax for 2024, 23.7 or 237 million. Oh, you can tell I'm boy, that's a lot of money to me. 23.7. It's not 23.7. It's 237 million. 2022 Dodgers payroll was nearly 300 million. So they shed quite a bit off that, or at least they could. Now they have some options, so there's different ways you can go there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's certainly a lot of flexibility in how they want to go about this, and they do have young guys coming up to where they can supplement that, and they can get a lot of that high-end, top-of-the-line guys like an Ohtani. There's a reason why we're talking about it, because it is a realistic possibility for the Dodgers to be able to get him and be able to potentially add a starting pitcher to that as well. That certainly is in the cards.
Yeah. The Korean high school pitcher we signed does not have to serve military time. That is great news. That is from Roy. Jay says home runs. Craig says Texas up 3-0. Craig says, I hope Dodgers don't get outbid for players they really want. Yeah. Okay, so Hep says, I think the Dodgers have a limit of 2 mega deals they would give out, one being Mookie. So they have one more mega deal to hand out. What player would you use it on other than Shohei? There's a good point there, too.
Ooh. So
Astros getting off to a Dodgers-type start. Oh, man. Okay, man, the Astros, golly. And, hey, actually, the Astros, right before the Dodgers came to Oklahoma City was the AAA affiliate of the Astros, and I still can't stand them. So there you go. All right. Jay says Los Angeles Dodgers 249 versus Atlanta 307. Okay. Hep C, Muncy at $10 million is a bargain.
Yes.
I'm just over his type of offensive game. I get it. It just doesn't do anything for me when the playoffs come around. Now next year he might hit 18 home runs in the playoffs and the Dodgers might win it, but I just get tired of watching him strike out at pitches that are 6 inches above the zone with the team trailing by 3 runs because he's trying to hit a home run. That's not necessarily him. I mean, I'm just tired of that philosophy. So take that for what it's worth. I'm kind of acting like the old man, get off my lawn type deal with the boomer bust type offense. I've just been talking about it since May, and it just to me it's leaving the Dodgers at the altar. So my opinion, I want to see Miguel Vargas or Michael Busch at third base. I want to see JD Martinez or Shohei Ohtani at DH. I want to see the Dodgers be able to open up the ability for Will Smith to play some third base, to DH some, and to play some first base, to take a little bit off of him, to get him in the lineup. You know, if you sign Ohtani, there's nowhere to put Will Smith if he's not catching that night. So I say $10 million is not expensive, but I say no to it just because I want a guy that is going to have a higher average, is going to put the ball in play more, and be more of a dynamic type of offensive player. But again, that's just me. And hey, this is the War Room, and we all have our opinions, and that's what makes this thing great. Okay, Ohtani batting average over 300, not just slug. He gets on base, yes. Trade Muncy. Dodgers could use an Ichiro type player, yeah. Okay, Jay says, I think Casey is making a case to trade for Juan Soto.
Yeah, no, and he's going to be, I don't know if he's a free agent, obviously not this season, but the following season, that I believe, or the year after that, one of those years. I mean, he's one of those, again, generational type talent, and he's so young.
He has an edge, too, I think the Dodgers could use.
Yes, and so obviously he's on the Padres, so not a huge fan of him right now, but the talent that he has is absolutely incredible. You can't have likely Juan Soto and Shohei Ohtani on the same team. And so if you want to potentially wait to get Juan Soto or get him in a trade, which I think could potentially be an option, and you want to give him that mega deal because you're getting him for some of his younger years, you'll get him for years.
So who are your pitchers going to be at that point?
All of these, it depends on what you're able to do, and each one of these decisions leads to a whole variety of different outcomes as far as what you're going to do. So trading for Juan Soto, I've put that as unlikely. I think the Padres probably still are going to try to compete. I think they're going to look at their run differential and say that's going to correct itself at some point. Plus, they have so much invested in the team anyway. I see it as unlikely, but not impossible for that to happen. If the Dodgers wanted to sign him to some sort of long-term deal, they might choose him over Ohtani. That certainly is an outside-the-box way to look at it.
So if I were to ask you what's the number one surefire way of giving yourself the best chance to win playoff games, what would your answer be?
I think right now with the Dodgers, I think they need a frontline starting pitching. I don't think
they're in discussion. Yeah. I mean, the pitching is okay. So here's kind of what Andrew Friedman referred to in his press conference the other night. Hey, offense is very difficult in this game. If you fail 7 out of 10 times, you're considered a Hall of Famer. That just goes to show you how hard hitting a baseball is. So offense is not controllable, even for an organization like the Dodgers. Pitching, for the most part, is. If you have dominant pitching like the Atlanta Braves did in the 90s, and they didn't necessarily, well, I think they won World Series, but just you know, to the point, the best way for the Dodgers to become more predictable as far as postseason success matching regular season success is for them to have pitching that everybody knows is going to go out and dominate the opponent to give the offense time to catch up. If the pitching was a situation to where you knew you were going to string zeros up and you're going to go out and only give up 2 or 3 runs a game, yeah, then you can have a whole bunch of Max Muncies because you can wait 6 or 7 innings and strike out 2 or 3 times and then wait for that 3-run bomb in the 7th inning. But if you don't have your pitching staff shored up and then you're also relying on a boom or bust type of offense, that is just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, it certainly has played out. I think the Dodgers, everybody knows that the pitching down the stretch, wide variety of different excuses. Ultimately, it didn't live up to what they needed it to. And so something with that has to change. They have to find that number one guy that they can rely on to go out there and be there and keep the Dodgers in the game, not give up 6 runs in the first inning, which I know certainly came out of nowhere and kind of set the stage for the rest of the series in the playoffs. I think that certainly is something that is going to be addressed. Obviously, you have Walker Buehler coming back. You don't know how he's going to respond coming off of the injury. I expect Bobby Miller to make some regressions, but even with that, you need to add to this. You need to add some of the depth, but most importantly, some of that top line talent. That is the number one priority during this offseason.
Okay, Craig says everybody wants Chung tonight. Okay. Gris says Chapman ended up hitting 8th on the Jays hard pass, and Candelario isn't better than Bush or Vargas. And Hep C says let Hayward and Peralta walk. It's time for Bush to get reps in left field. Okay, so I would reverse that. I've seen them both play quite a bit in left field. Miguel Vargas has a chance to be a fantastic left fielder. I would say Michael Bush has quite a bit less of a chance for that to happen. So if I were to pick Michael Bush or Miguel Vargas, which one should go to left field? In my opinion, after having seen them play quite a bit out there in Oklahoma City, I would easily choose Miguel Vargas in the outfield, Michael Bush in the infield. So same concept, though. I think I'd flip the guys there. Okay, so Roy says, fasten your seatbelts. Here comes Scherzer. Yeah, Michael DeLuca could turn into a guy, but I doubt he's going to be on the bench and be he says, could turn into a guy, but I doubt he's going to be on the bench and be a defensive replacement. I bet he gets pretty good run next year to be the starting left fielder. We'll see.
Yeah, I think I think the Dodgers underratedly value his talent. I think going into last season, there is a lot of talk about who
he came out of nowhere.
Who the Dodgers are going to add in the Rule 5 draft. And there's a lot of names put out there. Ultimately, the Dodgers decided to put Johnny DeLuca and protect him from going to other teams. There's a reason behind that, and that is because they very much value the athlete that he is and the skill set that he brings. I think he's going to be utilized a little bit more than expected. Obviously, things can change. You know, the Dodgers like their veterans, but he certainly has the talent, and the Dodgers seem to value him to that certain degree where they want him to be a part of the roster.
So here's the thing about DeLuca. He was a switch hitter at Oregon, and he would hit left-handed. He was a leadoff hitter. They wanted him to slap the ball. They wanted him to get on base, use his speed. Totally different game in college than it is professional baseball. So he gets into pro ball. He gets with the Dodgers. He ditches the left side, only swings right-handed, gets to lifting some weights, starts building some muscles. All of a sudden, he's hitting home runs. You saw him last year, I believe it was, in 2022, Austin. And through about the 1st of June, he was hitting about $190. You remember that? Okay.
I sure do.
Yeah, and I talked to the hitting coach at the time for the Loons, Dylan Nishotka, about midseason. Dylan point blank said, "Hey, the numbers don't look like it, but watch out for this DeLuca kid. This guy's making great swing decisions. He has every type of offensive swing that he needs. He can hit every type of pitch. He's the perfect, offensive player in terms of all the things he can do. He can hit for power." And at this point, I really didn't know a ton about DeLuca, know more about him than I did anybody else. You just kind of see that he's struggling. You saw that he wasn't really necessarily a power guy at Oregon, and that, you didn't know a whole lot about him, and he wasn't a whole big old deal. And then boom, all of a sudden, literally in the last year and a half, he's just absolutely shot up the prospects charts and really made a name for himself, and to the point now to where he's really good. So I think that's where some of the hesitation comes from DeLuca, because I think this organization likes more proof than he's given in terms of the length.
Yeah, no, I think there's certainly a case with that. But even with that, I think Coach Rasatka really highlighted what's important with a lot of these evaluations. The results aren't always the thing that you're going to be looking for, because obviously with this, you're trying to predict future success. Very difficult thing to do, but you're looking for a lot of those underlying things that should show results. And I think with that, with Johnny DeLuca, with some of his numbers, some of the decisions that he was making. He obviously was making some really good decisions. Eventually, that's going to catch up, and that's going to showcase with some of the results. And that's what happened with DeLuca. Was an absolute pleasure to be able to watch him do that in Great Lakes. And I think he has made those adjustments. He's been consistently, if you look at some of the advanced numbers, WRC plus, above average hitter at every single level that he's gone at. And we look at some of those other numbers, walks, strikeouts, power numbers. He's been really good. Adding to that with just the athleticism that he has, ability to steal bases, play dynamic defense. I really like what John DeLuca is able to offer. And I think the Dodgers, whether or not they decide to utilize this talent, they have it. And I believe that he deserves and should get plenty of opportunities this upcoming season.
Yeah, Andy Pages very, very, very streaky. I know we have a comment here that he was on fire before he got hurt. Yeah, he got hurt actually his very first game at that AAA Oklahoma City, which was very, very, very unfortunate. He hit, I believe, 250 in May, and then he hit 257 in April, and then in May, actually, he was hitting 333. And he actually was having a very good May and then got hurt. So that's definitely very disappointing for him. So it'd be fun to see him get back on the field next year. Hep C says, yeah, that's the Pius comment. So Grizz Monster, Lux, Vargas, Bush, Avens, and DeLuca all see more pitches than Hayward, Peralta, and even Mookie this year. Only Muncy, JD, Martinez, and even though he struggled, Altman are the only three guys who saw a lot. Yeah, that's a good point because, hey, you can't walk if you don't take a lot of pitches and see a lot of pitches. The more pitches you see, the more likely you are to hit it because your dugout gets to see more. I think I still owe Austin about $100 anyway, says D'Adamino. All right, Grizz says, all righty, starting staff isn't a smart play. Okay, Roy says, Casey, it has been proven you can't have enough starting pitching, no doubt about it. Are we assuming Kershaw is going to retire?
That's a really good question, and that is something that we don't necessarily know. I think the avenue for the Dodgers, I think if he wants to come back, I think they still believe that they can find a role for him. He's obviously not going to be pitching all the time to the level that he has. I think he's going to be, you're looking at maybe 100 innings out of him next season. You're looking at really trying to limit some of his workload. There are some concerns that you do have with him. Obviously, the last post, you don't want to draw conclusions from one start. I think that's a foolish thing to do, but it was a very concerning start last time. I don't know what the answer is. If Kershaw wants to come back, I think the Dodgers will find a place for him, and I think they'll work something out. It'll be just a one-term deal. They could use a left-handed starter, so I think the opportunity will be there for him if he wants to come back. But with that, he can't be the number one starter for this team going forward. I think that has to come from outside the organization.
Ohtani will also be a pitcher for 3 or 4 years to come. He gets back to healthy. Let's hope that's the case. That's from Craig. Eric, good evening, Eric. Thank you so much for joining. They need a new face for the franchise. Yeah, we've had that conversation before. We're all good with that, whichever way you think on that. Jay says, I'm in on Ohtani, and I'm in on Yamamoto. Jay also says that the Dodgers can afford Ohtani at $50 million. That's the annual value for him, and Yamamoto at $30 million. That's right around the 2022 salary table. That's not my issue with Ohtani. I don't think the Dodgers definitely you can't afford not to have him while he's productive, right? I mean, the next 3 or 4 years. I mean, he's worth whatever he gets, right? That's not my problem with Ohtani. My problem with Ohtani is after about 3 years from now, when he starts, descending, and you still have 7, 8, 9 years left on the contract, and you're getting quite a bit less player, what do you do with him then? So the annual value of him next year, the year after that, even the year after that, isn't the concern for me. It's the 7 or 8 years after that that's a concern for me.
Yeah, and I think we've seen that play out with a lot. Obviously, here in Michigan, we saw that play out with Miguel Cabrera. He was nowhere near the player that he was earlier in his career, and he was just somebody where you had to try to find some sort of role. I don't necessarily expect that dramatic of a fallout for Shohei Ohtani, but I also don't know that because he's such a unique player that I don't know what the long-term ramification for him. I think that certainly is a concern and something the Dodgers could look into. We know that in past contracts, they wanted to go for more of the higher annual value as opposed to the years to try to cut back on some of those years. If they go after Shohei Ohtani, though, I don't know if that necessarily is going to be an option. That definitely is of major concern with that, or signing any player long term.
Hep C says, I think Ohtani is going to get a 9-year after the arm injury. We'll see. I'm hearing 11 to 12 years. At least that's the starting negotiating point. So it could end up at 9. Rude Dog, good evening. Hey, thank you so much for joining. I think Ohtani, Yamamoto, and trading for a Burns Cease type pitcher should be 3 moves we got to make. Yeah, that would be pretty nice.
Yeah,
that would be 3 pretty good moves.
Yeah, no, and that certainly would add a lot. And I think that's one of the avenues that the Dodgers would very seriously consider, is adding 2 of those starting pitchers. Yamamoto would be a really good one. Adding somebody via trade, and then if they want to go after Shohei Ohtani, he's not a bad ball player.
Yeah, Roy says, Casey, you're spot on with Muncy. So, hey, there's somebody that agrees with me on that. The Damno says we should go get the Max Muncy in the A's organization. Yeah, then you could have 2 of them. Yeah. Hey, good evening, Fernando. Thanks for joining. I agree about Muncy. He used to be my favorite player, but I think it's time to trade him. Rude Dog, what do you guys think of Matt Chapman?
Yeah, I think obviously he's a very talented player. I don't necessarily know that I want to meet the demands of him. I think he's a little bit older. I think he strikes out a little bit too much from what we are looking for. If that's the case, I don't think you can have both Matt Chapman and Max Muncy in the same lineup. I think that would be a little bit of concern. I think Matt Chapman,
because of the high strikeouts.
Because of the high strikeouts.
Yeah. See, I'm out on a guy like that. I'm totally out on a guy that strikes out a lot.
Yeah, and
that's just where I'm at, though.
Yeah, and so with that, I'm not necessarily all in on a guy like him. I think he's still a very good, talented player, and I think he's really good defensively at third base. That certainly would be something that a lot of Dodgers fans would appreciate. But we know with a lot of these players, as they get older, there's a little bit of that aging curve. I don't know when that's going to hit Matt Chapman. I still expect him to be a pretty solid hitter, but he's on kind of that wrong side of that. And I think he'd get a little bit too much length from what the Dodgers would want to give. So I'm not in on Matt Chapman for those reasons. Still a very, very good ball player, though, and somebody that Dodgers fans would be happy to get.
Gris says Chapman is starting to have lower back issues, and those lower back issues, when they start, they don't finish. I mean, they don't go away. They just simply don't. Hep C says, do you think Mookie being leadoff is contributing to his playoff struggles? First of all, his playoff struggles are recent. He's been a very good playoff contributor in the past. So that is an interesting question as to what is causing that. Maybe having Lux as leadoff Mookie at the 3 spot with Shohei and Smith behind him can ease his playoff struggles.
I think that's potentially an option. I still like Mookie Betts in that leadoff role. I think I look at the larger sample size from the regular.
Overlaps.
I know I'm just talking about Mookie Betts in general, as far as
being a leadoff hitter in general.
Yeah. Yes, in general, I look at the overall larger sample size as far as a predictor for success. I know he hasn't had great postseasons at all the past 2 postseasons. I still think he's a really good player. I think adding somebody to try to help ease the pain. I don't think the leadoff spot in general is necessarily the issue. Mixing things up potentially could be an option. We still have to see how Gavin Lux is going to react coming back from injury. I fully expect him to run away with the role that he's going to have next season, and I'm excited to see him play. But that being said, right now I still trust Mookie Betts in that leadoff role.
DeLuca looks like Ron Say. That's awesome. I love that. I've heard that. That just cracks me up, man. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay.
You gotta love the comments.
Oh, no doubt. Okay, Austin, this one's for you. This is your sweet spot. Michael wants to talk about the bats we can trade for. We've talked about Matt Chapman.
Yeah. Okay. So bats that you can trade for. That's a really good question, because trading for guys, trying to figure out who's on the trade market, is very difficult to do, or to evaluate to see who's kind of out there. There's a couple of guys that could potentially be out there, I know, or potentially a couple teams. You look at if the Dodgers want to package a starting pitcher and another bat. That could certainly be an option. I think the Dodgers potentially, although I don't think they need to, could potentially be looking for an outfield bat. And so a lot of names have been brought up, like a Luis Robert or like a Randy Arozarena. I'm actually not in on Luis Robert, only because I see some very concerning signs to what Javier Baez was earlier in the season. It's actually almost exactly like the type of player that he was. And we've seen guy that doesn't walk, has high strikeouts, kind of comes out of it at times. So I have a little bit concerned, even though his contract is totally reasonable and he'd be a really dynamic player for next year or two. I just worry about long-term success with him. With a guy like a Rosarena would be extremely fun. I don't know if Tampa Bay wants to get rid of him. He certainly has proven to be a really good playoff performer as well. You might look at a team like St. Louis and try to get some of their utility, like a Tommy Edman or a Tyler O'Neill, and try to get some of those guys. The trade market is very difficult to look at some of these bats. I don't necessarily know what other teams are thinking, which makes it difficult at this point. But that is certainly something where if you want to add a bat, that is an avenue that you can go ahead and attack.
Yep. And then again, also you can go in-house. The next show we're gonna have here in just a second. We're gonna transition into some of the starting pitchers that we think are gonna make their ETA here in 2024. Specifically, 3 landonknack. We're gonna talk about nickfrasso and riverryan. 3 guys I think starting pitcher wise, they may not be starting pitchers when they hit the major leagues because they're gonna pitch in whatever role is needed. We're gonna throw some video up and talk about them. So I think we're ready for that. And then the next video, the next live video, we're going to try to have more live videos like this. We've had a wonderful crowd. We're going to talk about maybe some of the in-house, some of the minor league guys that could help offensively. And as a crowd, we're going to talk about those guys and compare them. We're going to have a good talk about the free agents like we have tonight. And then we're also going to take a look at the in-house guys. So, hey, Austin, you ready to look at nickfrasso, landonknack, and riverryan?
Absolutely. I'm excited to take a look at some of these guys, see some of their film. I've had the opportunity to see each one of these guys in person, and I think there could be a very serious help for the Dodgers next season.
Okay, well, let me get this started. See if I'm kind of if you see a white screen, I apologize here. Let me get that off. Let's start with landonknack, and let's see if I can get this going. Austin, can you see that right there?
I cannot see it right now, but I've seen that pitch as long as the audience can see it.
Okay, so hold on one second here. I think if I do this right here and go over, I bet you can see that now, right?
I am seeing it kind of blurred out with some of the background effect actually right now, so...
Okay, that's good. That's about as good I think as we're going to get tonight. I think I'd have to work on. I think that's a chroma key.
I can see it. I can see it in the actual chat in the actual room. So yeah, that should be fine.
Okay, so let's dive in. Tell us, landonknack. Hey, where would he fit in? What type of role would he have if he came to the Dodgers? First of all, I'll explain him as you see it. I actually got this video with my beautiful bride in Wichita, Kansas, and got a chance to talk to Landon that night. Landon is a 4-pitch strike thrower, and really 5 pitches because he can make that slider kind of look a little bit bigger, or he can make it smaller looking like a cutter. You see that fastball with the arm side run there. Want to get right behind home plate. This is actually a game that he gave up 3 runs early in the game and really kept his cool and did a good job keeping the Dodgers in. And Wichita is always a very good team. So this is a good, look at that. You get to see that right at the top of the zone for landonknack. So 4 pitches fastball, can touch about 96. You saw the sink there. He also has a slider that he can make more bullet shape for a cutter. And then he also has a curveball and a changeup. Now, all these guys have great stuff. I think what's going to separate him, if he's going to be a long-time major leaguer, I think is the fact that he can throw 4 pitches for strikes at any part in the count. I've seen him many different times get behind the count. Let me go ahead and replay that. And He will throw any pitch in any location, and he has confidence to throw them all for strikes.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing with Landonknack, and one of his biggest strengths is his ability to throw strikes and limit some of the walks. We saw that this past season in Double A. You talk about a league in which hitting is very prevalent in that Texas league. Only walking less than 2 guys per 9 innings is really, really solid. And pair that with just the pitch mix that he has, being able to throw strikes. The 4-pitch mix, I think, is really effective because that can keep hitters off balance. With Landonknack, he is Rule 5 eligible coming up, and so he's going to have to be added to the 40-man roster. I think that's an easy decision for the Dodgers to be able to add him because if they don't, I think he very much will go to another team. So I think Landonknack, he absolutely deserves. This was a big season for him. But I think he stepped up and was able to show just his stuff and be able to have a really good performance this past season. He's somebody that I don't necessarily know what his role is going to be for the Dodgers. I expect him to start out the season in AAA, work on throwing some more strikes, and then be able to figure out whether they want to use him as some of that emergency starter going into next season. We know the Dodgers needed that with some of the depth with the starters, with some of the injuries, or I don't know what exactly his role is going to be. He certainly is very talented, and he has the stuff to be a starting pitcher with those pitch mix. So we'll see how the Dodgers want to utilize him.
I think he's dead. I love that. That's your bit, Viva. No, that's actually Eddie's Leonard right there. I love how he straddled the bag there. The Dodgers, a lot of their guys, they go in front of the bag and then they swipe tag. I think that's a large part of why sometimes they don't throw runners out. The Damno says, Casey, I'm sorry to hear that you went to Kansas. Yeah. Hey, Wichita, man, that Riverfront Stadium that they just built. In Wichita, they had a Lawrence Dumont Stadium back when they were the Royals affiliate in the early 2000s. And then before that, they actually tore down Lawrence Dumont and built this Riverfront Stadium on the exact same location. And the only reason I know that is I put in my navigation to go there the first time, and it kept coming up Lawrence Dumont, of which I'd been to many different times. I'd played there several times. Like, no, I don't want to go to Lawrence Dumont. And finally, after about 15 minutes of fiddling with that, I finally just said, you know what, I'm going to drive to Lawrence Dumont, forget it. And lo and behold, it was the new Riverfront Stadium. The wonderful people at Wichita are so fantastic at Tim there giving credentials. So great place to go see a game. Wonderful facility. Landonknack, I think he's squarely a starter. I think his stuff isn't in the 98, 99 range, which is what you want. I think that's why Michael Grove fits so well in the reliever role, because he can bump it up there. He's a guy that in shorter burst can actually bump it up 98 miles an hour. I think even in short burst, I'm not sure that Landonknack could get it up that high. So I think he's your 4th, 5th type starter. I think he definitely stays in the starter role. His value is that he can throw 4 pitches for strikes. That has to be a guy that is allowed to go 4 or 5 innings a couple times through to get comfortable. The question is, why didn't that get called up this year? The simple put is he got hurt towards the end of the year. He got moved up to AAA. He had a fantastic year. ERA was a little bit over 2. Finished the year on the IL. And then also, when you look at guys like Kylehurt and the guys that got called up, those are guys that are bumping 100 miles an hour. Landon, especially after what happened to Gavin Stone, who was only throwing 93, 94. They didn't want to bring up Landonknack, these pitches right here at Wichita, I can remember it very vaguely. He's in the 93, 94 range right here, what you're seeing on the screen. I think the fact that that Gavin Stone struggled being the 93, 94 mile an hour guy, I think that really hurt Landonknack and him getting promoted. The Dodgers wanted to go with the guys that had the stuff that was, in their minds, more plug and play because it had the higher velo.
Yeah, I think that certainly is the case. And he'll have a little bit of an easier path to get to the major leagues this upcoming season, with us expecting him to be on that 40-man roster. So I think he will have an opportunity. We know there are injuries to starting pitchers throughout the year. I think he has a little bit of a step behind some of those guys just because they've had some experience. Depending on what the Dodgers decide to use, I mean, we talked about them potentially trading for guys. So a guy like landonknack could have that opportunity to get promoted and showcase some of his stuff, be able to provide 4 to 5 innings out of the starting pitcher role, not be up there intimidated and walk a bunch of guys, but really go after and attack some of these guys, use some of the pitch mix that they have. I think he's somebody that can really surprise a lot of people and show to have some sort of success. So watch out for landonknack next season.
Jay asked Kylehurt, starter or reliever. I think a little bit of both. I think he's a piggyback guy. I think instead of putting in a starting relieving type, there's that straddle right there. I love that by. And then just drop the glove. Don't swipe the glove at all. Just straddle the bag, drop it in front of the bag. The runner has to go to the bag, right? Okay, so I think instead of thinking starter reliever, I think you think bulk inning. I think Kylehurt is a bulk inning guy.
Yeah, no, I think that is the appropriate role and something that he's gotten comfortable throughout the years in the minor leagues, being in that role. So like giving him in some of those shorter spurts, potentially adding some of the length that he does have, but really taking advantage of that electric stuff that Kylehurt has, I think is going to be important.
Okay, so any questions about landonknack before we move on to Nick Frasso? I think we're going to go ahead and do that right now. If you have some, go ahead and leave them in the chat, and then we will get to them as we continue on our conversation. Here's Nick Frasso. Took this video. I like to take these videos of guys warming up. There is the warm-up, the band work, just to kind of show you the routine of these guys as they go through. Then you go to the long toss. Then you get to the flat work. I didn't get the flat work in. Then you get to the bullpen. There is Durno Linger there to the left. If you see the left corner there, that's Durno Linger, one of the pitching coaches that was actually at Rancho, then got moved up to Double-A Tulsa. And him and Ryan Dinnick, they both were, the Dodgers went to that 2 hitting coach and 2 pitching coach system. So here's Nick Frasso on the bump. First thing you notice, very tall, very lanky, very angly, just kind of a lot of knees and elbows, uncomfortable for the hitter, and he's definitely a crossfire. What I am saying when I say crossfire, watch his foot land about right here, towards the third base side. So when he does that, he's coming all the way across his body. That is a big-time crossfire, makes it very, very difficult for hitters to pick up on. See how that hitter pulled off right there?
Yeah, no, he certainly has a very unique approach. And when you add that to the stuff that he has, it makes it very difficult for hitters to hit. He electric stuff. You talk about landonknack might not have the top end velocity. You're looking at a guy who has top end velocity right here.
Multiple times over 100 miles an hour, including, he got hurt. He went to Loyola Marymount, and then he got drafted by the Jays, got hurt, came back, and, then it got hurt, and then had 2020. So in 2021, came back for about the first time in a year and a half, threw off a mound, and hit 101 miles an hour on several different occasions. So this is a guy that's already on multiple occasions thrown it over 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, no, he certainly has the high-end velocity, and then you mix that with some of the off-speed pitches that he's able to throw in there too, makes him extremely tough to hit. No, he came over from the Toronto in the Mitch White, Alex DeJesus trade, and I only had the opportunity to see him one time, but it was such an incredible start with him and riverryan in that piggyback role out in Lansing. He is certainly incredibly dynamic and extremely good stuff that he has, which makes you incredibly excited. He's somebody that you look at the overall baseball community that looks at a lot of these prospects. He's certainly somebody that has caught the attention of a lot of these guys. There's a reason behind that. He's really, really talented.
I can tell you, I was sitting right next to the analytics guy for Tulsa, and I was sitting literally about 6 inches away from all of the in-house cameras. So this is the exact same camera angle that all the camera angles use for the MILB TV. Of course, most of them, when you're talking about pitchers throwing it to home plate, are done from center field. But any of their angles that come from behind home plate, I was literally 6 inches away from those cameras. And with all the analytics guys, all the scouts, I was sitting with them. So that's the angle that I was at. So you're getting a great angle. Yes, he is very tall. He looks like he's 8 foot tall because he's so long and so lanky. And look how long his legs are. Those long legs of his really are make it very difficult for a hitter to pick up on the baseball.
Yeah, no, they make it incredibly difficult. And you look at him with this, obviously he's able to get a ton of swing and miss with his
Hmm.
stuff, not just with the velocity, but you throw in that changeup, you throw in the off speed pitch as well. He certainly can get a lot of strikeouts. And you saw that with his numbers over at Double A, striking out 11 and a half hitters per nine, something that is really good to do, making that next step up to the next level while also being able to control a lot of the walks too. We only walking less than 3 batters per nine.
Yes.
That is something that is really important for him to be able to do. So with that, you're very excited with what he's able to do. Question in the chat is, does Nick Frasso, do you see him as a starting pitcher? Do you see him moving and transitioning into some of that reliever type role? What do you expect to see him going forward with the Dodgers? Obviously, he will have to be added to the 40-man roster. I think this is probably, or at least one of the easiest decisions the Dodgers will make as far as this Rule 5 draft is concerned. What is the plan going forward to get him to the Los Angeles Dodgers?
Well, he is definitely a starter. I mean, his value for a major league team is starting pitching. But the Dodgers, hey, if they go out and get 2 or 3 starters on the market, he may not start out that way with the Dodgers because they may just try to figure out how to get him on the mound in LA in any way they possibly can, kind of like they did with Kylehurt, like they've done with Ryan Pepio. So there may not actually be room for him to actually be one of the 5 starters or 6 starters, whatever the Dodgers decide to do, what type of rotation they decide to go with. So although he may not start out a starter with the Dodgers, if you look at his game logs, he was going 5, 6, 7 innings towards the end of this year, which was great to see. So he has been a little bit injury prone in the past. That's the one thing you would be a little bit hesitant about with Nick Frasso. But he is definitely 100% a starter. I have seen it with my own eyes about 9 different times. He's still hitting 99 in the 6th inning, and it is still effortless. So this guy is 100% a starter.
Yeah, and you just look at what do the Dodgers actually think of these guys. With Nick Frasso, every single appearance that he has made with the Dodgers organization has been in the starting pitching role. So I think that at least is a plan going forward. Obviously, that can change because of his dynamic arm. And if the starting pitching is a little bit crowded, but they see Nick Frasso as a guy that they still want to utilize, just like a guy like a Kylehurt who has dynamic stuff. If they want to utilize him and find a way to get him into that mix, that I think they could potentially have him go to the bullpen. But I think for right now, the plan is to try to get him to be the starting pitcher. And I think with him adding some length towards the end of the season or last season, I think is something that really speaks towards that.
Pitch mix for Nick Frasso, 3 pitches. He has the fastball, change, and slider. Definitely his best pitch is his fastball just because of that. Look at that extension. Okay, you're talking about, it's 60'6", and he's landing. So here's a normal landing spot. If you can just tell by the depth here, this is actually, about 6 inches in front of a normal pitcher's landing spot. So you're talking, and he created this hole by himself right here, Nick Frasso did. So you're talking about a guy that gets 6, 7, 8 more inches of extension than the average professional pitcher does. So definitely just the what's called the perceived velocity on his fastball, although it's hitting 100 on the radar because he gets such great extension and because he crossfires. That pitch is looking, then that good little slider there. That fastball is looking a lot faster than 100 miles an hour to the average hitter. Hey, I also like to tell fans out there, if you go to dodgersdaily.net, I have features on all these pitchers, and I actually have a feature cut at the prospect feature at the end of them that has all this video that I usually show you throughout the year. It takes you through all their pitch mixes. It takes you through what makes them good, what makes them bad. They even talk about their own pitch mixes and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to go to dodgersdaily.net, I have that. So definitely best pitch is the fastball because of the extension, because of the crossfire, because he is long and lanky and just awkward looking for a hitter. And then his best secondary pitch, in my opinion, is his changeup. When he's landing that changeup, he can literally just go through the lineup with 2 pitches.
Yeah, and I believe that you have an interview with Nick
Yes, I
Frasso
do.
on the channel as well. So be
Yes.
able to check that out and hear from him himself as far as how he was feeling at the time, what his pitch mix is like, and a little bit more about his story. Definitely go check out because I think that's something that is really cool and what
Yeah.
we're able to provide at Dodgers Daily.
Yeah, I'm going to get into some more interviews this week. I'm going to talk to, I hope, Kendall George. I've got about 10 or 15 of them set up with some really cool guys in the system. Okay, so Frassel looks like a free and easy rubber arm guy out of a 3/4 slot. Yes, definitely. Not a rubber arm, though. He has been susceptible to injury, but, definitely free and easy. Okay, so Hep C asks, what's Ricky Vanasco's ETA? 100% completely and totally, unless things just fall off the rails. Nothing's a guarantee. But the season that he had this year, next year, I think Ricky Vanasco could be a big part of the LA bullpen. Of course, LA, they take forever to get their prospects up. They have a hard time trusting them. So, like I said, nothing's a guarantee. Yeah. I don't think there's. Matter of fact, I communicated with Ricky just about 3 or 4 days ago about his ETA next year. And, of course, he didn't give any comments on that. Obviously, I made the comment, hey, I think your ETA is going to be next year. And he was like, hey, thank you. I appreciate all that kind of stuff. But I definitely think Ricky Vanasco's ETA is next year. We're going to go, in our next show, we're going to go over all the relievers who we think their ETA is going to be 2024. He will be one of them. So we're going to really highlight him on the next show. Does Frasso have reliever risk? Is he stretched out to be a starter? Definitely a starter. We talked about that. Good evening, Eric. Devo, thank you. Looking forward to seeing Maddox Brun's progress next year. His stuff looks special, very special, no doubt about it. Do you think he'll get promoted to Double-A considering all the promotions that have happened in the system? I would be shocked if Maddox Bruns doesn't start in Double-A next year.
I could see it potentially going either way. Obviously, he's got the great stuff. I think there's still some aspects that he's got to work on, some of the peripheral stuff, just kind of maintaining it, being able to control some of the walks, just some of those small details and stuff that he's got to work on. The stuff that he has there is absolutely dynamic, and you talk to some of the catchers and stuff in this system, and they absolutely love having him pitch and seeing some of the pitch mixes that he has. With him, he's still one of those guys that has stuff to work on. But I think he's got incredible talent. I could see him potentially, like he did this past season, he started this past season in Rancho before 5 or 6 starts later, moving up to Great Lakes. I could potentially see that, but it also depends on what the Dodgers decide to do with the starting rotation, which guys they send to Oklahoma City. That could have a little bit of an effect down the line to potentially impact a guy like a Maddox Bruns. I think a guy like a Justin Robleski would probably start in Double-A for sure. With Maddox Bruns, it depends on who's available. Certainly a dynamic, nasty left-handed arm, though.
Yeah, the Tulsa Drillers were pretty depleted. They were pretty depleted by the end of last season. You had guys like Orlando Ortiz, who's a good pitcher, but then you had Ben Kasparius and guys like that are very good pitchers. But I think there's plenty of room on the Tulsa Drillers roster. Matter of fact, here are the pitchers that are on the starting pitchers that are on the Tulsa that finished the season on the Tulsa Drillers roster. Ben Kasparius. Okay, so then you had Orlando Ortiz Mayer, yep. Robbie Pito, who was kind of that, wasn't necessarily a starter, kind of that piggyback guy. Yeah. And then Kendall Williams. That's it. Those were the starters. That's why I say I think I would be surprised, because when you look at those starters, Robbie Pito can easily be the bulk inning type guy. Kendall Williams, guaranteed starter. I think Orlando Ortiz Mayer, you've seen it. He can be used in any role that you possibly want him to.
Yes.
Ben Kasparius, I think, is definitely a starter. So when you look at those, I think that's two. I think the Tulsa Drillers have 2 definite starters coming back. I think that's going to be Ben Kasparius, Kendall Williams. I think that leaves 3 to 4 spots. 4 starters, I think that gives you Justin Robleski. I think that gives you Maddox Bruns. And then probably you keep one of the guys that are already on roster.
Yeah, you could certainly do that. You could see a guy like a Hung Il Choi potentially getting that opportunity. There's certainly a lot of time to try to figure out what the minor league pitching staff is going to. It's far too early to tell. Maddox Bruns will see time in Double A next season, though.
Let's put it that way. Good way to put it. Yeah, Grizz says, just meant that Frasso looks like a Stretch Armstrong toy. That's meant by Rubber Arm. Hey, got my Stretch Armstrong in my closet right now. Can't live without Stretch Armstrong.
Yeah,
Gotta love Grizz for bringing up the Stretch Armstrong, my favorite comment of all time.
Yeah, that's a pretty good compliment.
You probably know what Stretch Armstrong is, do you?
Oh, I know what Stretch Armstrong is. Yeah. No, that's a pretty good compliment right there.
Okay, Jay says, off topic, but did Cartaya struggles hold back Dalton Rushing in the sense of creating a logjam at Double A? No, not at all. Dalton Rushing was going to stay in High A all of this year. He moved up for the playoff series at the end of 2022, and remember, he just got drafted last year. I don't think his progression, moving up, not moving up, had anything to do with Diego Cartaya. Now, it might this year, because the Dodgers might want Diego Cartaya, he's young enough to still do this, to repeat Double A, which would be interesting because you still have Carson Taylor, too, who had an injury-ridden year. So that'll be an interesting logjam. I don't think it was a logjam from last year, but it may be for this year.
Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to see what the Dodgers decide to do, catching specifically at Double A. Dalton Rushing's too talented. I mean, if you look at his postseason performance, particularly the Midwest League Championship, he had one of the most unbelievable stretches of baseball that you could possibly imagine. He dealt with a bunch of injuries, but through that, even taking into account his stretch where he went 0 for 25, 0 for 30, he's such a good player. He has to be challenged at Double A. So it's going to be interesting to figure out how they go about this. I think they're going to put both of those guys in the position to where they need to, whether that means that Cartaya repeats Double A. I could potentially see that happening. What that means for some of the other catchers in the system will be interesting. We know Dalton Rushing can play some first base, can play some DH as well. There's going to be some interesting decisions coming up to be made as far as the playoff or the minor league rosters are concerned.
Yeah, there's some good questions here. What do you do with Hunter Fiducia? Boy, that's a great question, and I have no answer. I literally have no idea I don't think they have even thought about Hunter Fiducia. I think the last time they thought about Hunter Fiducia was, we're putting him in AAA, we're leaving him in AAA for 2023, and I don't even think they've even thought about what they're going to do with him for 2024, so I couldn't even venture a guess for him. My guess is they're going to leave him exposed to the Rule 5 draft. That would be my guess.
That's a really tough call too, because Andre Fiducia showed up and performed this past season. He did everything that he needed to, and if the Dodgers aren't going to value him, aren't going to protect him on the Rule 5 draft, he's going to be there. And I think that a team potentially could see some of the numbers that he has, some of the value that he has, and take up that contract to be able to add him to that 40-man roster, or the 26-man roster, I should say, adding from the Rule 5 draft. No, he's going to be somebody that the Dodgers are going to have to see what they're going to do with the backup catching position. Otherwise, I'd be more than thrilled to see Hunter Fiducia be able to get an opportunity wherever that be, whether that's with the Dodgers, whether that was with another organization. We saw a guy like a Ryan Noda have a lot of success in Oakland. We saw a guy like a Jose Hernandez have a lot of success in Pittsburgh. We could potentially see that with Hunter Fiducia.
And Gus Varman had a lot of success till his last outing after injury.
Absolutely.
Milwaukee.
So with Hunter Fiducia, he's either going to be, I believe, added to the 40-man roster, in which case that is a win. You have a really good opportunity to go up, or he's going to have a really good chance to be picked up by another organization, and other organizations would be foolish not to take him.
Oh, I think he'd be a slam dunk. Last year I made a pretty bold statement. I thought Ryan Noda would be the first one off the board in the Rule 5 draft. There's Tim Campbell, by the way, the guy in red. He's the one who takes the pictures for the Drillers. When you see these nice pictures that I put out there, he's the one who sends it to me. So thank you to him. That's Brandon Lewis who caught that. I think he probably would be the very first Dodger off the board in the Rule 5 draft if he's not protected.
Yeah, well, obviously it depends on, assuming that they protect Nick Frasso.
He's a catcher. I think that'll be valued.
Yeah, no, that's going to be incredibly valued. And so, yeah, no, Hunter Fiducia, he's going to have opportunities next season with what he was able to produce this season. Whether that be with the Dodgers or another organization, we'll have to see.
Hep C says, will they be aggressive with Peyton Martin's progression? No. He is a young man that is out of Clemens, North Carolina. He is an absolute rock star. I have a feature on him. I have an interview with him. He is awesome. He is going to be an awesome pitcher. But when you look at Nick Frasso, Landonknack, Kylehurt, riverryan, who you're seeing, we're going to talk about riverryan here in a minute. Then you go to all the lefties with Maddox Bruns. You go to Justin Robleski. You got Ronan Kopp. You got Ben Kasparius. You got all these guys. You don't, and I think you could, but I don't think you have to. I don't think in any way, shape, or form you have to rush Peyton Martin whatsoever. Peyton Martin was bumping. He hit 99 miles an hour this year. This dude is going to be a rock star, but I do not think that they will rush him.
No, and I will add one point to that. All of those points are true. I also want to be able to watch a little bit more of Peyton Martin in Great Lakes this upcoming season. So next season, as the Great Lakes Loons are pushing for another postseason berth, I expect him, Jared Karros, Peter Hubeck, all of those guys to be
Peter Hubeck, Jared Karros, forgot them,
all of those guys to be really important, having really important roles on this team. And then we'll see what happens with some of the other guys in the system. A guy who's super underrated and had a really good this past season starting, Jan Castro. It'll be interesting to see what he's able to do as he recovers from some of his injury. So a lot of really good, talented arms in this system, including coming up, a guy that we're going to feature in riverryan.
Yep. Okay, so let's get to riverryan. We'll answer questions as we're talking about him. We've been seeing his video for a couple of minutes now. riverryan is a guy with big time stuff. He reminds me kind of a more polished Peyton Martin, if you will, in the sense that he has a swag, the big time swag. Okay, so his brother, Ryder Ryan, actually was in AAA with Seattle last year. His dad and his uncle both played professional baseball. His brother, Ryder, went to North Carolina. This young man is out of North Carolina as well. And hey, he was going to go to North Carolina, all those schools, but he actually had a back injury in high school that kind of backed everybody off of him. So he ended up at UNC Pembroke. It kind of was a blessing in disguise for him because he became the best two-way player in all the United States of America. He got drafted by the San Diego Padres. And when he did that, he was actually a very, very good two-way player for them. And then, hey, the Dodgers worked their magic. The Dodgers traded for riverryan, and they gave away Matt Beatty. And the thing about that is I was actually at the game that you're looking at here with riverryan pitching. This is his AAA debut. And guess who was in that AAA lineup that day?
Oh, who was it?
Matt Beatty.
Yep.
So the Dodgers gave up Matt Beatty, who was in AAA at the exact same time as riverryan. And of course, the appeal to that was that there's Tim Campbell right there, and see that Drillers in the red. That is the team photographer for the Drillers. They gave away a guy thinking, hey, Matt Beatty's major league ready. We're giving away a guy who's probably going to be a better major leaguer in the long run, but we're going for the major league ready guy now. Lo and behold, they were in AAA at the exact same time.
Yeah, that just tells you what some of the advanced scouting was able to do, and they were able to find a guy that was undervalued in the San Diego system and be able to utilize some other teams' need at the major league level to further add talent to the minor league level. That just shows some of the just the talent and the skill that the Dodgers have with acquiring some of this talent. riverryan is an absolutely incredible pitcher. You talk about dynamic stuff being, that swag, some of that, just the stuff, being able to get a lot of swing and miss stuff. I know it wasn't always prevalent at the AA level last season, but you look at a lot of his strikeout rates with some of the other levels he's been in. He
didn't throw enough strikes to strike enough guys out. I'm going to put that point blank.
Yeah.
He struggled to find the strike zone. Hey, and I hate to be critical, but you got to call it what it is, right? Okay, if there's one thing that could hold him back, it is the strike zone. That's why the swing and miss stuff was there. Trust me. I mean, he was bumping 100 miles an hour. Look at that slider right there. The changeup is just nasty. Okay, the way I describe him is nasty. Good slider there for getting me over. But the reason why he didn't strike more guys out was because he was behind the count too much, and he was having to serve up pitches that hitters can hit.
Yeah, no, and that that obviously is something that is kind of a theme throughout this system. Being able to throw strikes with him, he's got the electric dynamic stuff. I think he's going to be able to figure that out, find a lot of these answers, continue to work through a lot of this stuff. But I mean, that's stuff, that talent, that the pitches that he's able to throw are going to give him a really high floor. That velocity that he throws with, the attitude that he pitches with, being able to do this as a starter or as a potential piggyback starter. I know I had the opportunity to see him in that piggyback role with Nick Frasso
right there
against Lansing. Yeah, no, he is an incredibly talented pitcher. He's actually not eligible for the Rule 5 draft, so you could see him potentially added. He's at least a little bit further behind than Frasso or Knack, not in terms of development necessarily, but in terms of the actual timeline that he might appear on.
So you're saying no 2024 for him?
I'm saying that he's not first in line for 2024. You could still see him, but he would have to be added to the 40-man roster, depending on how he pitches, which we know that he can pitch really well. He could force his way onto that 40-man roster, like we saw a guy like Gavin Stone do earlier this season. Depending on what the situation is, he's right up there in line. Just there is a couple of guys just with the 40-man roster situation ahead of him.
I think he's third in line. I think first in line is going to be Nick Frasso or landonknack. I don't want to be able to. I don't even want to give a prediction which one would be first. I think second line would be the other between those two. We're talking about guys who haven't made it yet, not guys like Gavin Stone or Kylehurt. Okay, I think Riverryan would be third in line from those guys as far as who would get promoted next year.
Yes.
Would you be in agreement with that?
Yes, I would be in agreement with that. Yes.
Okay, so we have some great comments. Been mostly a great month for former Loons between Seager going off. This is the Damno. Seager going off in the postseason, and Zach McKinstry. Love Z-Mac. Got to talk to him several times in Oklahoma City. Interviewed him. Actually wrote a story about him. Wonderful young man. You know, he was that up and down train, and every time he would come back and travel a lot, Travis would ask him if he wanted to be in the lineup that night because he traveled so much. And he'd always say yes, and sometimes it would affect his play, but he always had such a great attitude. Theron Lorenzo, another great catching prospect, along with Carson Taylor and obviously the two big ones, Dalton Rushing, Diego Cartaya, Jesus Galisa, another one that's a great catcher. Don't sleep on Griffin Lockwood Powell, you know, and then Yainer Fernandez, another great catching prospect that you got to see.
I sure did. Yeah, all those guys incredibly talented, and that's just scratching the surface on a lot of the catching depth that the Dodgers have.
So Rude Dog says, I talked earlier about trading for a Burns Cease type pitcher. My question is, which pitchers are off limits in those hypothetical trades? Bobby Miller. That's it.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. I think Bobby Miller is the one and only pitcher in the Dodgers organization that is off limits. I think they would trade every other one of them. And I say that because that's a win-win for everybody. When these guys get traded, like Jordan Leisure, man, this is an opportunity for them.
Yes, no, it certainly is opportunities with them, and I think that's how you have to approach it. That's not necessarily saying that you're eager to give up these guys. No. I don't think the Dodgers are eager to give up these guys at all. What that is saying is
you're getting a Corbin Burns in return. That's what you're saying.
You have to get that top-line starting pitcher, and with that, you're going to have to give up something of serious value, something that is going to sting to see this guy go. But with that provides an opportunity for them. With a lot of these younger starting pitchers, we know how talented these guys are. We've been preaching about that a lot. We know how talented Emmett Sheehan, Gavin Stone, Kylehurt are. And so
I would say Sheehan would probably be the closest thing behind Bobby Miller that would be untradeable.
Yes, I would say so, probably too. But with that, depending on what the right deal is, obviously there's going to be negotiations in place. It would be a win-win for these guys, for the players, to get a top-line starting pitcher with that. So I think Bobby Miller, you see him potentially emerging as that ace pitcher going forward. He's got a ton of years of control. Same with the rest of these guys. So he would probably be the one guy that you would look to make him unavailable. Everybody else, that conversation is open.
Yeah, Hep C says we could have used Ryan Noda in left field over David Peralta. Noda led the league, I believe, in base on balls. Yeah, and he's great athletic ability. And two, I kept trying to tell people the dude can play left field. He's very athletic, extremely athletic. He was a point guard on his team. Noda would take. Matter of fact, I talked to Kevin Malachesti about this, who played him in high school. Ryan Noda would get the rebound off the rim. He would take it coast to coast to the point guard, and he'd dunk on the other end. That's how athletic Ryan Noda is. Jay says, I think there are 10 teams in the major leagues who would carry Hunter Fiducia as a backup. I would agree with that. Hunter had a good spring training, says Necron. Thank you for joining, Necron99. Sam, I certainly appreciate that. I love Fetty, but I think he'll be traded. That'll depend on and what kind of value another team would put in Hunter Fiducia based on the return there. What do you think about Josue De Paula? Is there a chance he makes a jump to Double-A? I can't see that.
No, I think he's still got to make that jump to high A, and then we'll see how he adjusts from there. We'll see what level they start him out at. So
Grizz Monster said, I'm sorry, go ahead. I thought you were done.
No, I was just gonna say his performance could dictate a jump up to Double-A, but it's far too early to make that jump.
Grizz says baseballs matter. Now they did. Okay, so Double-A was going with an independent ball for a while. They actually went back to the minor league ball last year. So I think the baseballs actually were uniform all the way through from single A Rancho all the way through Triple A Oklahoma City. I think they all were using the same baseball. They did experiment at the Double-A level for a while, but I know they went back last year. Jay says, I do not understand why the balls are not uniform. It doesn't make sense. I think they fixed that. Eduardo Quintero tore up the DSL. Okay, Miller, Josue, rushing, and Yendrys Vargas, untouchable. I'll say this, man, I don't put anybody as untouchable until I see them do it in the Double-A level. I'm just telling you, it's such a jump from whatever, especially from if you haven't even been an affiliated ball to Double-A. I mean, yeah, raw ability is raw ability. There's been 7 trillion players in the game of baseball that have had raw ability. So until I see them with my own eyes at the Double-A level, I just can't make anybody untouchable.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Even with the immense tools and talents that a lot of these guys have, I think it's going to cost a lot to get rid of these guys, and you can make the argument that nobody's untouchable. But with that, certainly you want to see them prove it at a little bit of a higher level. That certainly can be the case, just depending on what your philosophy type is. All of those guys, incredibly talented, going to be part of this organization, a big part, or going to get some big talent in return.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And I think we're going to cut back to both of us here. I'm going to stop this and bring Austin back into the screen. Hey, we've had a good talk tonight. I'm going to turn off the virtual camera so we're not quite as jerky, and hope my computer likes all that. We're going to go from here. So we've had a great crowd tonight. Lots of fun. We're going to do this each and every week where we highlight some new guys. Next time we do this, we're going to be talking about the relievers that we think will have an ETA for 2024 and more talk down the farm. So Austin and the crowd. Hey, one last reminder, I did not get the super chat set up tonight, but if you would, if you'd like to donate to Dodgers Daily and help us out here where I can throw Austin a little bit of cash for helping out Dodgers Daily. We're all doing this as a hobby on our own free time. It does take time. It does take money, and we're going to continue to do that forever. But if you would like to help Dodgers Daily, the link to our GoFundMe account is in the description. So if you have any last thoughts right now, now's the time to put them in the chat. Make sure and leave a comment on the regular video of this, so whenever it gets archived, it gets more views. Leave a like and all that. So final thoughts.
Yeah, I actually want to take this in a little bit of a different direction. Obviously, we've been talking about the Dodgers system for a lot of this show, but I actually want to highlight 2 players right now that actually were part of the Dodgers system that I got the chance to see that are actually doing some really exciting stuff outside the system. And so first player I want to highlight, we'll kind of go over this a little bit quickly, a guy by the name of Chris Roller. He actually only made it to the low A level, which at the time was Great Lakes. He just got added been a long journey for him going through the Cleveland system. Now as part of the Milwaukee system, he has officially been added to the 40-man roster. So congratulations to Chris Roller, outfield prospect. Hopefully he gets the chance to do some cool stuff with Milwaukee. The other guy that I want to highlight was a part of Great Lakes in 2022, was a big part of that team. Aldrich DeYoung, DJ, as he goes by. He
I
just
call him a
got
lightning
drafted.
bolt.
Yeah, absolutely. He actually just got drafted by the new baseball league that was created in the Middle East, Baseball United. He was drafted by the Dubai Wolves or whatever the team name is in the 9th round, which actually has players like Robinson Cano, Didi Gregorius, Jair Jurgens is on the team. He's going to be surrounded by some really cool players. He's going to be able to continue his dream in baseball if he chooses to continue with that, which I'm assuming that he is. I don't have any communication with him. But with that, even when these guys are outside the organization, which you talk about potentially Hunter Fiducia might be picked up in the Rule 5 draft if the Dodgers don't add him. We are continual fans of these guys as they continue out their baseball progression, as they continue their life. So I want to make sure that two guys that I had the opportunity to see in Great Lakes highlight some of the important accomplishments that they were able to do and some very exciting news for them.
Hey, it's been a great show, Austin. I certainly appreciate it. Got to take the two dogs for a walk and say hi to my beautiful bride, which I really haven't even had a chance to do. We got to drive to the store and back and talk a little bit. That's about all the time we've got to spend together tonight, so can't wait to go hang out with her for a little bit, take the dogs for a walk, and get out of here as we end another great Dodgers Dog Show. What a wonderful crowd it was tonight, huh?
Oh, yeah. No, these live shows are a lot of fun to do. So if you want us to continue to do these live shows, don't leave it in the live chat comments. That's not the place to do that. Leave it in the actual comments.
Yes.
We won't read those live chat comments anymore. We want to read the actual comments, which coincidentally helps with the actual algorithm with this. So if you want to see these going forward, go ahead and leave a comment right there. Live chat comments also do help. I was being a little bit sarcastic there. But no, we love doing this. We love hearing from you, even though got a little bit sidetracked from some of the original 10 of the show.
Hey,
that's why
great.
we love it, because that gets us what you guys are thinking of, and then we can provide a little bit of feedback and then go into a little bit more of the minor league side, which we know we pay attention to quite a bit.
We're going to cover the minor league side on every show from here on out. I don't care how long it makes the show last. I will not go another show in the offseason without talking about the minor leagues. And I think as the show's going on, you're going to have a little bit less to talk about the Dodgers. It's going to be a little bit more straightforward, and people are going to start looking forward to hearing from some of the prospects we might be seeing here before too long. So super excited about that. Hey, just one last reminder, we do have the link to our GoFundMe account in the description. If you'd like to help Austin, who you're seeing on the screen right there, Austin, give us a wave. Yep, that's Austin right there. If you'd like to help him or I by donating, that link to the GoFundMe account, it's in the description. So until next time, I would like to say, hey, and also, as Austin said, leave a comment, not just in the chat, but in the regular comment. Make sure and leave a like and share this video. That way it continues to get recommended by YouTube as it gets archived. It gets more views. We keep growing, and we can keep doing what we love to do here at Dodgers Daily, which is videos like this. So until next time, I would like to thank the wonderful crowd we had tonight, all the great interaction. Thank you guys so much, and gals out there, for tuning in to the Dodgers Daily Live show tonight. And I would like to say, obviously, go Dodgers.